Hey, this is Jesse James coming at you today with a very long-awaited video, the review of the 2025 new model for the lineup, Street Glide Ultra. This video has been a long time coming. I am excited to dig into this because this is a bike that I was worried that they weren't going to be coming out with a full dresser in 2025, and I am super glad that they've brought one for not brought it back, but kept it around, but gave it everything that we're seeing on the new touring bikes, because this is forever going to be a bike that has a place in the Harley Davidson lineup, at least in my eyes, that being the full dresser from the factory. Let's dig into it a little bit. So to start off with, this bike is not an Ultra Limited, this is a Street Glide Ultra. Now, a lot of people might think that's just a name and it's not important, but I cannot stress enough that it is an important factor of it, for the sole purpose of this bike rides like a Street Glide. Its bones are that of a Helix style Street Glide. This is not like the Limiteds of old. That down as I go over stuff like suspension and how the overall ride quality is compared directly to a Ultra Limited. So let's dive into it. Starting up here in the front, it's going to be the exact same setup whenever it comes to brakes and wheels here as we're seeing on the Street Glides. Two rotors. The valve is going to be right there turned out. So tire pressure monitoring system. This is all stuff that's been around for a little bit, not just on the Helix bikes, but also on the touring bikes just in general. Something I will point out about our rotors is these are lighter than the previous ones that were coming out on the Rushmore style. Bit thinner as well, but the braking power is still there. Personally, I feel like I could stop on a dime a whole lot easier on these Helix bikes than I could on the previous Rushmore style. The other thing I'll bring up while we're up here is how the lowers work in relation to the radiator. So as you can see, that is two different pieces that meet around it. I was personally a little bit worried whenever I saw this, because I figured that they might do something along the lines that we see with other companies whenever you add lowers to a bike, of where it just hooks up to what's already there. So I was worried there was going to be a line right here, with it being hidden behind that wheel where it's just the two pieces coming together and it wraps through here as it looks like it's all one big piece. I really like the look of it. So this is a lowrider that we put lowers on from Advan Black, and while riding it probably doesn't mess with it, but this is just an example of what I was referring to, of like a clean line where it's not doesn't look like it's a part of the bike. Sure, you won't notice while you're riding it, and from the overall, like from a distance, the silhouette looks good, but for me it would just bug me. So I'm a really big fan of how they incorporated lowers on the Helix platform. Next, moving up, you'll see our vents for the side of the bike have been redesigned to incorporate with the lowers. Not only is it going to be in a position where it's not going to be bumping the lowers, but also you're getting way more wind deflection with this, since it comes out more than you would have gotten on the style that is currently on the mainline Street Glide. It just wouldn't be offering nearly as much wind protection. So I really dig the fact that they adjusted that, and it is still fully adjustable. You are going to be getting a taller windshield from the factory. I'm curious to see how this windshield goes over. I've ridden on this bike and I was getting plenty of wind protection. Just from an overall look and aesthetic, it's really not my thing. I'm also still a very big fan of the clockwork style of windshield. But let me know what your thoughts are below. Now, this is a part of the bike that I was very excited for, and it's 100% for personal reasons. I love the new badging on this bike. I could not stand the badging that came on the Ultra Limited for the past several years. It just blended in with the paint. Over at a distance, you couldn't tell what it said. This is a very bold emblem. Even at a distance, you can see that it says Harley Davidson. And with the way that it flows with the paint of the bike, it's just a good looking badging. I particularly like how with the pinstriping setup, it actually looks like it goes almost in between the Harley and the Davidson perfectly. So very big fan there. Now, to my knowledge, this is the first time we're going to be getting a 117 on a non-CVO full dresser. So that is very exciting. This is still sporting the new centerline cooled Milwaukee 8 117, so it's going to be running a whole heck of a lot cooler, has the different modes. And one of the things that the motor company has added to it that I'm not sure I would actually need is actually these heat shields. That's something that comes from the factory. I do think it makes the bike look really good with having those heat shields, continues to give it that full duressor setup. But as cool as these engines are running these days, unless you were actually going cross country and going gas tank to gas tank before stopping, I would almost swear you might not need it. Giving you another good look of how those lowers all work in relation to the rest of the bike. As you can see, you've got plenty of space still for highway pegs. I really dig this new lever here for changing the positioning of your vents. The previous style that you had on the Ultra Limiteds, for me, was a little bit too hidden in there, or it would be like a little too stiff to move. This is a great little setup here to where you could adjust that on the fly while riding. And then my favorite feature of the entire bike, they've brought back a storage component. It clears the air breather. It's got enough room, wouldn't mind a little bit more, but they gave us back the spot where we can actually use this as a storage component. Because while with that new fairing, having that little tray is fantastic, I was personally never crazy about the fact that whenever we went over to the Milwaukee 8 setup of the Ultras and how they incorporated the radiators down there, it actually took away one of our storage spots. So this has been a long time coming, in my opinion. I also love the fact that the Ultras have always been the setup to where it is not just for the rider, but also for the passenger. And the passenger is still getting the floorboard back there from the factory. It's a nice little touch. Moving further back, the Tour Pack, which is now on the bike from the factory. I know that for me personally, I could just see myself taking it off and adding it back on just whenever I really felt like it or needed it. I wouldn't want to be running a full dresser all the time. But I also know there's plenty of other people that they would like to have that Tour Pack on it at all times. Or they ride around to up enough where they want to just get it set up done from the factory. They don't want to do anything extra to get it on there. So again, I know I said it earlier, I think there's always going to be a place for the full dresser from the factory. There's no exception here. That's what you're getting. One big thing to note here is where traditionally before we had some lights coming through here, there is no lighting in that setup. Like there's no wirings of any kind. There's like speakers not back here either. So, but this is, whenever have messed around with it, it feels like this is almost like a little fill spot. So I would wonder if you're able to still get it set up that way should you choose to. And there's plenty of people out there that make stuff for that, from Custom Dynamics. Harley has experience with it, so I would imagine you'd be able to do that if you really wanted to. Continuing on with the Tour Pack a little bit, this is the exact same setup that we've had previously on the Tour Packs. This is the King Tour Pack, the one that famously you can fit 2 full faces in. Been running this one for quite a while now, since 2014, and really I don't think there's any major reasons why we would need something else. Plenty of storage, very accessible for people. You'll notice there is no little glove box section back here anymore for your owner's manual or anything, so I would imagine you would either be keeping that up in the compartment for the fairing, or you know, at home in a drawer. Still got that new car smell. And yeah, like, so I don't think I've brought it up in a video previously, but the back fender of the new touring bikes are the exact same as the Rushmore style. That was one of the very few things that was left totally unchanged. So anything for the back here that you had on your previous Rushmore style of bike from 2014 to 2013 is gonna work on this setup. That's why I said earlier, if you had anything that you were looking to, like you have on your current setup that you like, that you want to take over, to my knowledge should work just fine. So now to talk suspension. As I've said a couple times now, the bones of this bike is still a Street Glide, just with the Tour Pack mounted from the factory. One major change that they've made that I would like to see over to the rest of the Street Glides is your adjustment knob is out external of the bike. No longer are you having to take off your saddlebag to adjust it on the fly. Now, if you're going to be doing anything like crazy, I do recommend using that spanner wrench to really set your rebound or dampening. I can never remember off the top of my head which one is which. But yeah, so the micro adjustment knob moved to the outside, which is super nice. Now we're on to the part of the bike that whenever I first saw it, I really liked it. I hyped it up, but then after riding on it, I'm not crazy about, is this seat. So this is a stiff seat. After like an 8-mile test ride, I was feeling how not nearly as comfortable that the Ultra Limited used to have. I do think it's still going to be an improvement for your passenger over the stock bikes on the Street Glide, but from a Ultra Limited over to a Street Glide Ultra, definitely going to be losing a little bit of comfort there. Stock, but you can always add a different seat should you want to. Now over to the big one, the infotainment. The infotainment setup on this bike is quite nice. I don't think I've ever really had any complaints personally of how this setup runs. For the audio settings on this bike, I went test riding on it with a full-faced helmet, and I thought I could hear everything just fine. We did get it up to highway speeds. It's got a little cover there saying it's from Rockford Fosgate, but I've yet to find anything where it's like a significant upgrade over your regular street or road glide. Instead, I was riding with a full face helmet. I could hear the music plenty fine. But let me know what your thoughts are if you've ridden around on this, if you feel like it's significantly better than the street or road glide audio. So not all unexpected at all is your controls are going to be the exact same as the controls on the street glide and the road glide. The volume knob is the only thing where I still have issues with it, but it's not bad. I think it fits the hand just fine. It's funny, I actually like the soft tail setup with these style of controls more than I do the touring. This bike is also going to still be sporting those different ride modes on it. Again, nothing unexpected there. You are getting the ride modes of with a custom mode as well, I should say. So one of the big things for me on this bike is the navigation. So you will still be getting Apple CarPlay module for free with it. This one does have the flash onto it, and in the tour mode, you can see where you'd really be using this for going cross country, of having your map set up to where you can see everything. Yeah, just super nice. And something I think it's easy to overlook, but definitely shouldn't, is the Street Glide Ultra is getting those heated grits from the factory. This is still the 1-2-3 setting, so for low, high, medium, high, versus the 1-6 style that we were seeing before. Should see a lot better longevity out of the single button and that twist knob. All right, now to do something that I didn't get to talk about in the last one is test ride. I have ridden one of the Street Glide Ultras, and I'm going to give like my brief overview with it. So the first thing is that front end, you can feel how much lighter it is with the that aluminum triple tree setup. I really dug it. Having rode on the Ultra Limited and then bounced back over to the Street Glide Ultra, I felt way more confident in the Street Glide Ultra with being able to stop it on a dime and slow speed maneuvers than I did on the Ultra Limited. The other thing was it was a super windy day. Like we were getting blown all over the road while riding on the bikes, and on the Street Glide Ultra, it was definitely cutting through the air a whole lot better than the Ultra Limited. Ultra Limited, if I would get hit with a big gust of wind, I was like, not TKO, man. Like, we're not focused on the ride, we're focused on staying upright. But the Street Glide Ultra, with that lighter front end and the aerodynamic designing of it all, super smooth, even on a very windy day. You definitely notice that 117 power plant as well. Like, we went, me and one of my coworkers went, we turned out on Lynch, and I was in third gear and was like in road mode, almost leaving him well behind me. And he's not a slow or timid rider, just like that's how much more power this 117 it has than the previous Ultra Limiteds with their 114s in regular road mode, not even the sportiest mode that the bike has. One thing I will nitpick on, and I mentioned it a little bit earlier, is that seat. The Ultra Limited, if previously, had one of the best stock seats from Harley Davidson. Like, if you're going to change it out, it's mostly just for aesthetics or very niche audiences just wanting a different feel. I was always a big fan of the Ultra Limited seats. The Street Glide Ultra, though, my goodness, that was a uncomfortable seat. Just after a short 8-hour ride, not 8-hour, 8-mile ride, I was thinking, man, I would have to get a different seat right away. Like, I would almost take the regular seat off of the Street Glide and put it on this versus riding with this seat. All right, now to go over to some color options and a little bit more on the money side of things. So as you can see here, starting MSRP is at $30,749. Thing to keep in mind with that, and Harley doesn't show it there, is that is not including the freight that goes onto it. This is our billiard gray on chrome, so this is your basic setup onto the bike. I think this paint color could use a little bit of pinstriping. The billiard gray is the only one on the Ultra that isn't getting it. And then for the chrome, I'm not a crazy fan of how that makes the tour pack stand out there in the rear. But that's an opinion thing. Let me know what your thoughts are. So this is Vivid Black. Again, Vivid Black no longer baseline, so there is $750 for that color. This one is getting a little bit of pinstriping through it, which I think helps break up the color just a little bit. With a bike of this size, with that much color onto it, having some pinstriping goes a long way. Next up, we have Blue Burst on chrome. Blue Burst, like, if there has been a color that has been meant for the full dress or trike setup, it has been Blue Burst on chrome. Love that color. Here we have Whiskey Fire on black. This, in my opinion, looks a whole lot better on black trim versus chrome trim, but I get why you would have it on the chrome trim as well. $1,800 is the upcharge on that. Now we'll go over to black trim. As you can see down there, black trim, you are looking at $1,350 more. Black trim on the billiard gray. No pinstriping here again, not totally unexpected. I do think that this color looks great on a black trim. Next we'll go over to Vivid Black. This is a little bit like, it's too much for me. The pinstriping helps, but it may have just been because last year everything was that black trim. So I'm kind of over it. I like a little bit more of a mix between the two. But let me know what your thoughts are. Here we have Blue Burst, and I didn't get to mention it earlier, but Blue Burst is looking at a grand upcharge for that color. I don't know how I feel about it on black, though. This is like a old school nostalgic color setup for me, especially with the metal flake in it. So to me, it's chrome or go home, but to each their own. Here we have Whiskey Fire on Vivid Black. This is the one that we got here in the showroom. I think this looks good. Even for me, somebody who is burnt out on black trim, these are colors that work really well. Here we have Iron Horse Metallic on the Vivid Black. This is only available in this black trim. I'm not sure how this is going to look. I still have yet to see Iron Horse Metallic in person, and I'm really hoping I enjoy it. $1,800 upcharge on that color. And then here we have Mystic Shift. This is the only paint from the premium division of Harley's paint team that is getting onto this setup, and it's a great choice. And that is going to be my full review and thoughts of the 2025 Street Glide Ultra. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching through. It does a lot for me from a motivation, but also a appreciating for the work side of it that you've gotten this far. Please leave a like, subscription if you'd like to see what I do here in the future, and hope to see you out riding.